Hello and welcome to another edition of Beyond the Headlines. I'm Ryan Gilchrest, Managing Editor with the Post and Courier Greenville. Thank you for being with us today. We're going to be talking a bit about vaccination in South Carolina and in particular, some of the efforts in rural areas of South Carolina. Joining us today to discuss that is Nathaniel Cary, Nate, we call him, and I'm going to call him Nate throughout this, so don't be confused. Nate, tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Sure. For those who don't know me or my background, I am a reporter at the Post and Courier Greenville. Prior to this, I've been a reporter in Greenville in this area for close to 16 years now, and started my reporting career covering Simpsonville and Fountain Inn and Malden in the southern part of or the southern third of Greenville County, and have covered city government and criminal justice issues, environment, education, a little bit of everything through the years. I mainly cover Greenville County government and county council and growth and development issues that stem from that. But over the last year and a half, we've all been coronavirus reporters. So I've been writing a decent amount about that as well.
We're going to talk quite a bit here in just a bit about why some vaccinations in rural areas of South Carolina are lagging, what's being done. But before we get to that, Nate, I thought it might be interesting to touch on the process of reporting throughout the pandemic. And a while back, we did one of these and talked a little bit about what it was like doing reporting during the pandemic. But since then, as vaccines have been more available and as a lot of things have sort of opened back up, I hesitate to say return to normal, but maybe moved back toward the way things were before the pandemic. What's that process been like for you in terms of reporting? I guess you can literally take us beyond the headlines on that one. What's the process like? How's it changed in the last few months?
Sure. We've done a lot of reporting from home, a lot of phone calls, a lot of Zoom meetings over the last year and a half. A lot of the government aspects had gone virtual as well. But in recent weeks and over the last couple of months, things have begun to open up in various ways, various stages, where meetings now are in person. Fortunately they've maintained a virtual aspect to most of those meetings, so there's some convenience for the public there, and I hope that continues. But as far as a reporter goes, I'm a very kind of a tactile reporter. I like to describe things. I like to set scenes in my writing. I like to meet people in person to be able to see for myself what something looks like, or if there's a chance to meet in person, I'd rather do that. And oftentimes interviews just go much better, and you feel like you know somebody a lot better meeting them in person versus a phone call. So that's definitely changed, and that's been a welcome change over the last couple of months. I wouldn't say everything's back to normal completely. There's still some change in some aspects where you will still wear masks in certain situations. There's still crowds at county council, and there's just different opportunities where things aren't quite back to normal yet, but they're on their way. I'll say earlier this week was the first time I got out of my car and met a source at a park, and I got out of my car and did the interview, and I got back in my car and I was driving back to work, and I never once thought like to say, hey, I'm vaccinated, or ask if they're vaccinated, or it just never crossed my mind. And that may have been the first time I could recall being in person with somebody one-on-one, and that not coming up or even crossing my mind. So I guess from that standpoint, I'm getting close to being back to normal.
Right. Yeah, it has been unusual. I think for we started up Post and Courier Greenville officially in August of last year, so kind of right in the middle of everything. And I want to say that at one point we had several dozen stories in a row that had the word COVID or coronavirus somewhere in the top two paragraphs. And just in the last few weeks, I think we've really found that being less the case. Nate, you did mention one thing there that I think is worth asking again, which is that yes, councils and boards are sort of returning to in-person meetings, but in many cases retaining that online aspect, which is useful for public access in a lot of ways. Do you anticipate that's going to continue indefinitely, or is that sort of a hybrid model that we're looking at right now?
I do think in some cases it will continue indefinitely. I know there's been several county council members who have mentioned that they appreciate the county continuing to operate that way. There have been a number of council members who have joined because they've been out of town or on the road or just stuck at work and running behind, and they've been able to join a meeting via Zoom that otherwise they would have had to miss or have been late to, or had to make other arrangements. So there's that opportunity to participate that I think will allow it to continue to be live streamed. And then I was in court in county court last week or week before last, and they have all of the courtroom has been completely redone with video screens and television set up and all of those modifications that were made so they could hold some proceedings during the pandemic. And if they've spent all of that money and technology, I see that that's probably going to continue as well.
Interesting. I know, especially in the case of courtrooms, that would be a welcome addition for many reporters to have a little more access there. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the issue at hand that we're going to deal with today. And before we get into some of the details and some of the things that you'd written in your story, I know you were listening in on a conversation that some state health folks were having about the state of vaccination at the moment. And that was, I believe, yesterday. So what's the latest news on that front?
Yeah, one of the big takeaways I took from that latest call, which plays into in some aspects of rural vaccinations, is the Department of Health and Environmental Control and our state epidemiologist, Dr. Linda Bell, was running that call, and she basically said the availability of vaccines, which for so long was an issue in how much we were getting and if there would be enough doses and having to schedule things out, that's no longer an issue. If you want a shot, you can get a shot. The issue now and what they see as the long-term strategy and concern really is complacency as people see case counts going down. Just saying, well, I'll just let it ride out and not get my shot and see how it goes, or misinformation, or just a lack of information, and that's the more of the issues that are being tackled now on a statewide basis.
So in the course of reporting this story, you focused, at least as an example of some of the issues, on Cherokee County. And at the time, this was a couple of weeks ago, Cherokee County had the lowest vaccination rate among counties in the state. Update us on that. What do the numbers look like now?
So about 3 weeks ago, when I was reporting this out, Cherokee County was the lowest, and they had been the lowest in the state for quite some time, as far as the rate of residents getting vaccinated. 3 weeks ago, they were at just under 24% who had been completely vaccinated. So that number is going to creep up, and it has started to creep up. They're now above 20. They're about right at 26%. So it's still quite low. That is low compared to other counties nearby and across the state. The top county in the state is Charleston. And they are right about 60% of residents ages 12 and up who have received at least a first dose. And then they're followed by Horry County, Georgetown County, Greenville County is right up there, Beaufort, and a number, Richland and Lexington are right there as well. So more of the populous counties in the state. that may have had the easiest access early on to vaccines, and probably have the most information spread about vaccines as well. So now it's getting the rest of the counties, or the lower counties, up to speed. And knowledge about it, information about it is the biggest way to do that. So in Cherokee County, that's where the real effort is, and that's what I was trying to report out, was what what is happening, what are the efforts being put in place to make the information available to residents so that they can make a decision one way or the other.
So what steps are they taking in Cherokee and presumably in other places? But I know in particular a panel was formed for Cherokee County. What steps are they taking to try to move those numbers up?
So some initial steps. We've had different panels across the state of volunteers, health professionals, and just community liaisons who could delve in a little bit more to what is needed in a particular region in the state. So the upstate has had a panel that's been meeting weekly for several months now. But more recently, once they really figured out that Cherokee was falling behind, they created an ad hoc committee of just people who were interested in kind of solving this Cherokee puzzle. And they met with some community leaders. They reached out to some of the local community centers. Spartanburg Regional is the main provider there, as well as Regenesis Community Health, who had both been providing vaccines, and just asked what the status was and what they could do better. Some of the there's a little community paper, the Gaffney Ledger, that covers Gaffney real well in Cherokee County, and they have taken some steps to get more information in the Gaffney Ledger, at least weekly, and then beyond that to translate that into Spanish so that they could distribute it to their Spanish-speaking populations as well. The migrant farm workers, who many of them arrived in late March, early April, and they'll work through the summer. And then taking, I know Regenesis has taken mobile clinics to a number of these farms to vaccinate farm workers, and they've seen some good response to that as well. So there's a number of steps that have been taken, but it's really probably a slow process to change minds, or to give people information, or to change them from being complacent.
And for those listening statewide who may not know exactly where Cherokee County is, it's just to the east of Spartanburg County along I-85. As Nate mentioned, Gaffney is the largest city. There are some smaller communities in the county as well, but it is mostly rural. It's a lot of areas where there's not a lot of development. Nate, one of the things in reading your story that really stood out to me was maybe some of the misconceptions about how to reach unvaccinated populations, or folks that they want to get fresh information in front of. Talk about some of those issues.
One thing that stood out to me reporting this out was listening to a lady who knows the Hispanic community really well in that area. And it's maybe just under 5% of the year-long residents in Gaffney or in Cherokee County, but a much larger population during the few months of farm work, which we're in the midst of right now. They just assumed that that Hispanics in that area listen to the Greenville Hispanic radio station, and found out that they don't. They listen to the Charlotte radio station. So this entire time they weren't getting information that was relevant to them about where they could go or what they could do to find out about appointments. And so they've taken some steps to address that, as well as making there are people in Gaffney who may not read the Gaffney Ledger, but they would get information from somebody who does read well in English. And so they realized, if we can get this information to them through that newspaper, or through translations of that newspaper, then we can make a difference in just getting that information out to them about the effectiveness of vaccines, the need for them, and the reliability of the vaccine so far.
Anything else in the course of reporting that story? And I know it sort of took a few weeks to pull that story together. Anything else that really stood out to you in the course of reporting?
One thing you notice, just looking at the numbers, and this is the same across the state, really, on a big scale. In Cherokee County and elsewhere, I imagine it's true from the rest of these rural counties. The population that's most at risk, 65 plus, is of course the highest who have taken the vaccine. But in Gaffney, the 20 to 24-year-old age group, as of 3 weeks ago, there was fewer than 100 in the entire county who had received the vaccine. And they're, that's that's a very social age group. So if the coronavirus is continuing to spread, it's trending younger in who is sharing it, who's spreading it. And even Dr. Bell commented on this yesterday, that we're seeing more people in those younger populations who are getting the virus and seeing some complications from it. And that 20 to 24 age group was much lower even than the 12 to 20-year-old age group, who's many of them whose parents are probably involved in those decisions as well. So the state is really focused on that young population now. We're seeing some incentives that they're even rolling out now. Getting a beer with a shot or a soda with a shot, and different incentives that are starting to ramp up now, to try to reach that young population that may not feel like they need the vaccine, but trying to get them to see why, how they can do their part to help eliminate the danger from the coronavirus here.
Yeah, I think the $1 million bonus was struck from the budget, folks, just in case you missed that news. It's not entirely a rural problem, Nate. Some rural counties are doing well. I think you and I talked. McCormick, which is a smaller county, is one of the higher rates in the state. Talk a little about that, but also what factors are creating sort of specific problems in rural areas.
A lot of these factors have begun to change to the more general issue of just communication, misinformation, overcoming that misinformation about the virus or about the disease itself, or about the vaccine or disease itself, and also the availability of the vaccine has changed quite dramatically, especially in these rural communities. Beginning in January, late January, the state began to send vaccines directly to some of these rural health centers, and more vaccines become much more readily available at a doctor's office itself, with a nurse practitioner in a small community, so that the people that folks trust most with their medical information now they can have those those conversations at a visit, and they can address the need for the vaccine directly with the people that they know the best, so they can overcome some of the misinformation or even just the complacency about the virus. You mentioned McCormick County. I was on the phone this morning with somebody at the Chamber of Commerce in McCormick County, just trying to figure out like what they've done or what is different there. It's the second smallest populated county in the state, but they have the third highest rate of vaccine people who have taken the vaccine in the state so far. And there's a large Savannah Lakes golf and lake resort there, and just the lady at the chamber who lives in that community said just about everybody in that community has been vaccinated. So that's a couple thousand people. So that may be one of the ways that their numbers have risen to the top. across the state, the health officials are making more of a direct, I guess, a direct approach at some of these rural counties and trying to raise their rates, much like Cherokee.
We had a question from a reader about rural availability, and you somewhat addressed this earlier with the comment about availability no longer being the issue. But the specific question was, are rural physicians and nurse practitioners being supplied with the vaccine? What have you heard on that?
Yeah, I asked DHEC about that just this morning after seeing this question, and yes, they are receiving the vaccine now. So they are able to have those conversations. They are able to provide the vaccine at those rural doctors and health clinics.
So what happens next with this issue? I know there was some comment about it not being a particularly quick thing to solve. What happens next?
There's been some more efforts to bring mobile health clinics to set up vaccine sites in the communities at different events, and I think that's what we'll see more in the next couple of months, specifically through the summer with festivals and events that are starting back up. One in particular in Cherokee, going back to that, there's a Catholic church there that hosts a big festival. I believe it's over July 4th or that in that time frame, and they're planning to have a clinic there, and that also would reach the Hispanic population there, which attends that church. So there's opportunities like that where they're noticing, all right, here's a specific event or a specific chance that we have to bring a clinic, to bring a mobile vaccine unit to these places, and much like they've done with bringing clinics to farms for migrant workers, they've also been taking it to manufacturing plants and reaching out to those specific locations to offer even more access. So we'll see access. We'll see more of an attempt to reach out to people and make it as convenient as possible. And then we should see more information just getting out directly to these specific communities. DHEC is also sending a round of postcards to every single home in the state, so that everybody can have at least some information about the availability of vaccines and the availability to have questions answered about those vaccines.
Yeah, as the quote in your story said, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, those numbers will creep up. They won't. They're not going up quickly. And there's some. There's a lot of question of whether South Carolina would ever reach that 70% threshold. For now, the numbers are looking great. The slope has gone down, but the virus is still here. It's still festering. There's concern among some in the state. Dr. Bell mentioned yesterday of spikes that we've seen elsewhere. That there's still a possibility that could happen here. And so people who are vulnerable, who haven't been vaccinated, would be most susceptible to a spike like that.
We did have one question just come in, and I don't know that we have the answer to this, and if we don't, we'll certainly circle back with it later. Do you know if rural providers are getting reimbursement from anywhere for administering the vaccines? I know there has been some confusion out there about how vaccines are paid for. Do you know of anything along those lines?
I believe they are, but I don't know specifics about that, details about that. But we can certainly check on that.
Okay, and we'll seek to answer that question. We can add that information when we get this posted online in the archived form. So we'll check on that. For now, I think that's all we have. Thank you for watching Beyond the Headlines. We'll post this recording on our website in case you want to watch it again or share it with a friend. You can find that at postandcourier.com/beyond-the-headlines. You can also support our work by signing up for any of our free newsletters, postandcourier.com/Greenville. Look for the link that says newsletter sign up, or go to postandcourier.com/Greenville/newsletter-sign up. paid subscribers like you make our brand of journalism possible, please consider a subscription. If you haven't considered a subscription before and are a new subscriber, we're currently running a subscription special, $4 for the first 4 months. Try us out, see if you like us. You can also support investigative journalism around the state. Go to postandcourier.com, look for the donate link, check that out. We'd love for you to help support us in that way as well. For now, and on behalf of Nate, thanks for your time. We'll see you again soon. Have a great day.
I'm glad that the Post and Courier is in Greenville, and I'm glad that it is launching as a digital operation. I think it's important for local newspapers to continue to have an accountability role in the community. There's not anybody else who's going to be able to find out what's going on behind the scenes, or is going to be in a better position to hold the powerful accountable in a community than a newspaper. So really, a subscription from a reader here in Greenville means we can tell more of those stories. And that not only gets you the ability to read and to be a part of this operation, but it also is an investment right here in the community that's going to stay here in the community.